Send it to people who want to. Okay. So what are we going to discuss today? Last week we discussed labels. That's okay. You are going to help other people study, right? Don't worry, I'm not repeating anybody's social security numbers on this class. Okay. Okay. Where are we holding? Okay. In today's class, which is going to be on page 36, we're going to discuss the two souls. And what does that mean? That means we each have a godly soul and an animal soul. And we are going to develop how the animal soul is not necessarily evil, but it's animalistic. And we will discuss the difference between being animalistic and evil. And, whenever I talk about this, a lot of times people are like, well, my dog is not evil. My dog is the nicest person. Why are you saying being an animal is bad? Well, we will explain. And we will discuss how from the animalistic soul comes our negative character traits. And however, it also has some good character traits.
Is this water to drink?
That's water, yeah. We will also discuss.
I need a cup.
Huh? Here, the cups are over here. There's also orange juice. Okay.
What kind of water is that?
Huh?
What kind of water is
It's just the bottle.
Oh.
It's just packaging. Okay. So we're going to start off with a question. And the question is, when a person looks at a picture that you know that you're in, what is usually the first thing you look for?
How fat you are.
You look for, yeah, exactly, how fat you are. You look for yourself. And how do I look? How am I presenting myself in the photo? This is the animal soul. It's always looking at itself. Where am I? What am I doing? How do I fit in the picture? And so one can question, is a person defined as just selfish or ego? Are we just full of ego? Is that who we are? Is that how we would define ourselves? At the same time, we find in our lives that we're not always all ego, right? So in other words, we find a lot of our lives is about ego, right? A lot of our day we think about ourselves, but then we do altruistic things as well. We do things that are not for ourselves. We do it for others. And this bothers a lot of people, okay? These two sides of ourselves, it bothers a lot of people. We have, it bothers a lot of people different ways. Sometimes we have dilemmas. What should I do? Do I go out and help, or do I stay home and watch the game? Do I don't know, what dilemmas do you have in life? Do I go to synagogue, or do I go to sleep? Do I pray right now, or do I, watch one more episode of the show that I want to watch? Which one do I do first? We're always full of dilemmas. The dilemma is not an outside voice. It's not the rabbi standing next to you and telling you. It's an inside voice within yourself, which means there are two parts of you. There's a part of you that says, I should really pray now. And there's a part of you that says, I should really watch this next show, and then I'll go pray. You know what happens after you watch the first show? Then you're like, well, maybe just one more episode, and then and then I'll go pray. And just one more episode, and then I'll go pray, right? So life is full of dilemmas. Additionally, life is full of ups and downs. We have ups and downs in life. You can go to synagogue, be very inspired, right? You ever go to synagogue, get very inspired? Maybe it's from the rabbi's jokes, but possibly from other things. You're inspired to become a better person, or it's Yom Kippur, or it's a yard site of somebody that you know, or someone passes away, you're at a funeral. So many moments of our life wake us up to the inspiration. When we tell ourselves, I'm going to be different. And then there are other moments where you're sitting in synagogue and you're like, why am I here? Should have been sleeping in bed. I should have been going out and making money. I should have been on the golf range. So which person am I? Am I the guy that wants to be in synagogue, or am I the person who wants to be in bed? Am I the person who wants to pray right now, or am I the person who wants to watch a YouTube video? Both. You're both, right? Obviously, we are both. So when we say we are both, where is that coming from? So the classic Christian depiction, I don't know if it's Christian, I don't know where it comes from, right? The two voices sitting on your head, right? The problem with that depiction is those voices are outside of you. And I really don't know what modern psychology says, but maybe some people might tell you that the reason why you have conflicting voices is because of things that people have told you, right? Maybe your mother guilted you into prayer. So when it comes time for prayer, you feel guilty because your mother guilted you about it when you were young. Or maybe when it comes time to get up and clean the house, it's because your wife has guilted you doing that instead of watching the football game. Some people might say that the voices are external voices that are just replaying in your brain. However, Jewish philosophy believes that maybe there's an element of the external that awakened those voices, but those voices are really internal voices within yourself. Those are really coming from two parts of yourself. What are those two parts? One is the animal soul, and one is the godly soul. Okay, and we're going to actually define the difference between animal soul and godly soul versus the Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov, the good inclination, evil inclination, because they are not necessarily the same. But let's first define, what is an animal soul? An animal soul is not evil. Is an animal evil? Are animals evil? I mean, no offense to anybody who has cats, but sometimes I wonder if some cats are evil. I mean, they seem to think, and they're like, how can I really get to the human beings? But I know a lot of people love cats. I also think cats are fascinating, but sometimes I do wonder. But animals are not, even animals that tear for eating, they're not evil, right? Are they killing because they're evil? No, they don't have a concept of murder. They're looking for food, right? So a animal, and it doesn't think about the other family. It doesn't think about the baby wild wildebeest or whatever it is, right? The animal that's tearing apart the other animal is thinking your 6 cats are offended. Okay. You see, they have cats have enough self-awareness to be offended. Just goes to show. Cats, I'm never sure, honestly, really. I mean, these cats, they look you in the eye and anyways,
they don't understand English.
I don't want to get off topic over here, but yeah. But an animal is completely thinking about itself. That's what it is. It's hungry, it's tired, its life revolves around.
Well, dogs don't.
Dogs don't what?
Completely think about itself. I think they think about their owners and their comfort.
So I don't want to digress on that. I had a JLI class.
We're
going to go with the generalities right now, okay? We can have a discussion on specific animals, just like cats. Okay, I was going off topic with cats as well. We can go off topic with any of these specific animals, and we can have a discussion. But I don't want to go off topic. Generally, you can understand animals are selfish, right? Because an animal is selfish. If a person is completely selfish, self-centered, from that you can understand that many bad character traits can come from, right? If a person is completely selfish, quote unquote, we might call animalistic, you could understand why somebody might get angry. If someone is interfering with my food, or someone is interfering with my comfort, I will get angry at them. If someone is doing something I like, then I get happy. That's obviously a good character trait. But it's all surrounded around myself. Now, again, because it's surrounded around myself, that means that you're not necessarily always doing bad things, right? So being a good parent could be selfish as well. Giving clarity can be selfish as well. A lot of good things can also be selfish. That's what we're going to learn. That's what I'm saying. The animal soul is not necessarily the evil inclination. Animal soul means it's self-focused. And to read it in words that I have over here, let's read, I wrote over here 3 lines, how to describe the animal soul. The animal soul is selfish. Number 1, it's selfish. No, it's not in the book yet. Number 2, it's short-sighted. The animal soul is short-sighted. Right? Animals only see what's in their immediate vicinity. Our animal soul also, right? Just like the animal soul wants those cookies, right? Because it's short-sighted. It doesn't see the long-term effects of eating the cookies. We do stupid things when we get animalistic, so to speak, because we're very short-sighted. And finally, we're very worried. Animals don't really have worry, but the human animal soul gets very worried. What are we worried about? We're worried because we're always worried. Am I going to have enough food tomorrow? Am I going to, what about my health? What about this? Worry is a hyper focus on self as well. Okay, so that is the animal soul. Again, selfish, short-sighted, and worried. Totally focused on itself. Then we have a godly soul. A godly soul is different. It is selfless. It has a longer vision of things, right? So it sees you do the commandments. Long term will be good for you, even if right now it's not necessarily great for you, right? So you're going to spend money you don't have on a mitzvah, but it knows long term that's what's good for you. And the godly soul is happy. It's content. It's not worried. It's not worried about anything. Just do the right thing. Don't have money. You do have money. Good things, not good things. It's all godly. It's happy. Most importantly, if you wanted to generally classify the animal soul as selfish, self-focused, the godly soul is mission-based. Always mission-based, not about itself, it's about its mission. It's about its mission, therefore, it's not selfish. It's not, it has a longer vision because it looks at its mission, and it is not worried because it's all about the mission, how everything fits in my mission. So again, if we really want to break it down, animal soul is self-focused, godly soul is mission-focused. Those are our two souls. Now, again, this is all an introduction. Because once I tell you this introduction, then you will hopefully better understand the words of the Tanya itself. Okay, any questions or comments about what I've said about the godly soul and the animal soul?
So Rabbi, I want to put on my doctor hat for a second.
Okay.
So, and I'm going to go bring up something that may be familiar to everybody, may not be. This almost sounds like Freud's discussion about, human life and things like that, with an id, an ego, and a superego. The id is the animal soul, the ego is the godly soul, and then something in between is telling you what to do, almost like a superego. So, what do you think?
The thing with Freud, right? The thing with Freud and why Freud doesn't fit into our model completely is because Freud believed that our deepest self is our selfish self.
Well, I think that's the one that exerts a lot of influence, but again, he had different types of people who would battle out the id and the ego and then the superego.
Right. But this is one of the differences between Freud and Viktor Frankl is basically what is the deepest driver of the human being, and Freud believed it was
correct.
Selfishness.
Yeah, it was the id. Yeah.
Frankl believed it was meaning. Okay, so that's where Freud, goes off the rails of what the Tanya says. Viktor Frankl more is in line with what we're teaching in Jewish thought. So Freud got the discussion started 100%, but his conclusion we definitely do not agree with. More with the conclusion of Viktor Frankl that ultimately man's search for meaning is the ultimate driver of any human being. Is the ego a very strong and powerful force? 100%, but what is going to make any person truly happy is their search for meaning, is their godly souls. We're going to describe it. But good ideas over there. Yes, Nicole.
And maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I'm like, I don't think being selfless all the time is necessarily serving you either.
Good. Okay, good. I'll answer that question. Because I get exactly what you're saying. Maimonides says that taking care of your body is part of serving God.
Right.
Okay, so you can be selfless, mission focused, and take care of yourself as well. Those are not separate things. The question is, when you are taking care of yourself, what is your ultimate goal and purpose? In other words, when you are making money, is it because I want to be very wealthy, or I have a mission in life? When you're keeping yourself healthy, is
exercising vain, or is exercising such that I take care of myself to be healthy to take care of my kids?
Correct. Or even, let's say somebody has no kids. just do their mission in life. You have to be healthy to do your life's mission. God wants you to take care of yourself. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. You have a question? No. Okay. Now I want to differentiate between what is generally called the evil inclination and good inclination versus the godly soul and animal soul. So the good inclination, evil inclination is usually what's depicted on the shoulders. You know, the red guy is saying really bad stuff, you know, steal the money, and the good guy is saying don't do it, right? The animal soul is not necessarily evil because selfish actions are not always evil, right? It may be the outcome of it is completely selfish, but the actual action is not evil. Selfish can drive you to do many good things. There are many people who do great things for selfish reasons, right? So therefore, the animal soul is not the same as the evil inclination. The evil inclination is when you have a pure evil desire. Now, why is this important? Because as we'll learn in the Tanya, we can convince our animal soul to do the right thing. We can bring it on board with the godly soul. Just like, let's say in life, right? We all like cookies, but we can get to a point, someone can get to a point where they see a cookie and they say, I don't want to eat that. Why? Not because they're crazy, they don't know cookies taste good, but they've come to fully understand and appreciate that the cookie is unhealthy for them. I'm not saying I'm there. Maybe moderation is okay. But let's say for a diabetic, right? Who really can't have any sugar. They can come to a point where they look at the cookie and say, I don't want to eat that anymore. You know, I really don't like it anymore. Similarly, over here, the animal soul can come to a point where it says, I love God, not because it's any more altruistic, but because it understands that the best thing for it in life is God. The evil inclination, however, on the other hand, can never be good. Evil inclination means it's telling you to do something evil. Okay, so that's the difference. Now, evil inclination is a part of the animal soul, and when you transform your animal soul, your evil inclination kind of, you know, goes away. But
So
we're not transforming your animal soul. When you want to have
Pork chop,
a pork chop, yeah,
that's an evil inclination, but if I say, no, I shouldn't because it's Saturday, that's my godly soul working.
that's your godly soul working. And you can also come to a point where your animal soul will also want godly things. That's also a possibility. I think a lot of that, you know, I think for a lot of us, you know, let's say the Judaism we grew up as kids, even our evil inclination likes it, right? It enjoys the holidays because it enjoys that. And even I want to say, not our evil inclination, even our animal soul can like it. And that's good, that's fine, you know, but that's the point. This is the difference. This is what Tanya is going to speak about later, is that in some ways we want to silence the animal soul, and sometimes we want to harness the animal soul, because actually the power of ego is a powerful force. And if you can harness the power of ego for the good, or the power of, shall we say, the animal soul for good, it can be a powerful force. But regardless, so to go back to our original question, when we ask the question, why do I sometimes feel on a high, sometimes feel on a low? Why am I caught with dilemmas? Because you're caught with the two souls that are pulling you in two different directions. It's like a wagon being drawn by two different animals, and each want to go different ways, you know? So you're being pulled in two different ways. And you have to figure out. Just to tell a story to end off this section. The story goes like this, that one time there was a chassid, a follower of the Adler Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe. He was very wealthy. And one day the wheel of life, fortune turned over and he lost all his money. And he, with his money, he was a very good person. He was charitable, he helped people, he gave out loans, yada, yada. He was a very, very philanthropic person. And so he came to the Rebbe, and in his mind, he was like, well, the Rebbe's got to bless me with money. Look, I was such a good...
This is a real story?
Yeah, real story. He says, the Rebbe's got to bless me with money.
Our Rabbi?
No, the first Chabad Rebbe, the one who wrote the Tanya. He says, the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe has got to bless me with a blessing for money, because I need money to do my mission. So he comes up to the, you know, he comes to the Rebbe and he starts crying in the office. Rebbe, I lost all my money. Please give me a blessing for the money. And he's crying. But the Alter Rebbe realized that in his mind, there was only one option of what had to happen. In other words, he knew, I have to be wealthy. You know, But if you stop for a moment, who says you have to be wealthy? Who says your mission in life is to be wealthy? Maybe your mission in life is tell people when you're poor. Also, who said? And so the Alter Rebbe stopped him and said, you are thinking about what you want, but you're forgetting what you're needed for. Now, you're thinking about what you want. You have in your mind, you've decided what has to happen. And you're forgetting about what you're needed for. And the man heard it and he fainted and he realized the truth and he decided and he dedicated himself to study. The end of the story is the guy became wealthy. But the point is the line of that story is that too often we get caught up in what we want and not in what we're needed for. And that's really the difference between the godly soul and the animal soul. The animal soul thinks too much about what we want, and the godly soul thinks about what we are needed for. That happens a lot of times, by the way, in our life when we box God into what he should be doing. We pray to God. Somebody once described it. Sometimes we think of God as a waiter, right? He's a waiter. God, some potato knish, please. We're telling him how to do his business. When in some ways we should be praying to him, obviously for all goodness, but exactly how that goodness manifests. And again, good can be manifested in multiple different ways, but exactly how that manifests, we don't know. A good example of this is business. You can put in your efforts in business. God says he'll bless you, but doesn't mean the blessing will come from there. It could come from somewhere else, as it explains, right? You could put effort. God wants us to work. So you might work in this area of your business, and it might be the other area of your business that will make the money, right? And that's okay, because we don't have to tell God how to do his business. But regardless, that was a little off topic. The point is that we have to sometimes stop, think about what we want and what is it that we are needed for. So now let's get into the text of the Tanya. Now that we have had a introduction, where the Tanya introduces to us the two souls. Okay. And I'm actually going to skip a page just to give you. I'm going to skip a page, but I'm going to start on page 37 because basically he's going to quote from a book. So first of all, I want to give you a history of the book, and then we're going to read what he says. Okay, so if you go to page 37 on the top, let's read. So again, the Alter Rebbe is going to quote his ideas from a special book. So what is this book? So let's read. Rabbi Chaim ben Yosef, on the top of page 37, Rabbi Chaim ben Yosef Calabresi Vital, also known as Rabbi Chaim Vital, from 1542 to 1620. As you can see, he lived only 38 years, was a major figure in the Sapphic school of Kabbalists that flourished in the middle part of the 16th century. He was the closest disciple of Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, the Arizal. Rabbi Chaim Vital lived more than 38 years. Sorry. The Arizal lived 38 years, from 1534 to 1572. That's 38 years, yeah. The most inspired and influential thinker of modern Kabbalah. So if you ever hear the line Lurianic Kabbalah, that's because it's coming from Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, also known as the Arizal. So the Arizal, buried in Safed, is the most influential Kabbalist. The Arizal wrote very little, passing on at a young age, and it was Rabbi Chaim Vital who was largely responsible for committing the incredibly intricate and complex system of his master to writing. So again, the Arizal was a great Kabbalist, passed away at 38. He did not write any of his Kabbalah, and his student, Rabbi Chaim Vital, wrote down all of his teachings. Now we're going to continue in here. The most comprehensive Lurianic work penned by Rabbi Chaim Vital is Eitz Chaim, Tree of Life, which took over 20 years to complete, though following the author's wishes, the book was not published in his lifetime. And again, he passed away in 1620. The final manuscript of the Eitz Chaim was edited and completed by Jerusalem Kabbalist Rabbi Meir Poppers in 1653. So that is 33 years after the author's passing, and published for the first time in 1782. Rabbi Poppers also collected the teachings of Rabbi Chaim Vital on prayer and its devotional meditations in another volume, Pre-Eitz Chaim, the fruit of the tree of life. As we shall see, the Tanya quotes both Eitz Chaim and Pre-Eitz Chaim extensively. So again, the Tanya draws on Kabbalistic teaching, but in drawing on Kabbalistic teaching, you don't necessarily have to go directly to the Zohar. You can go through Rabbi Isaac Luria, Luriana Kabbalah, as it's called. as is written through Rabbi Chaim Vital. In addition to recording the teachings of his master, Rabbi Chaim Vital also penned some of his own compositions. The most influential of these was Shari HaKedusha, an introductory text to Kabbalistic inspired living, with a strong emphasis on ethical conduct. It was first published in 1734. The manuscripts had been circulating more than a century beforehand. The remainder of chapter 1 of Tanya closely mirrors the first two chapters of Shari HaKedusha. So all it's saying here is that basically the Tanya is quoting from Lurianic Kabbalah as it came through Rabbi Isaac Luria's student, Rabbi Chaim Vital. Okay, now,
He used other books to write it.
yeah, he writes in his
I mean, he used his own thing.
the Tanya, yeah, he writes in the beginning that this is based on a compilation of other books. Yeah. Now we're going to go back to the bottom of page 36. Now that we gave you the introduction of his sources, I didn't want to interrupt in the middle of our reading to get what are the sources. So just wanted to get that out of the way. So now let's go back. All right, section 3, the doctrine of two souls, page 36 in the Practical Tanya. Ach Be'er Ha'inyan. Now that it is clear, we are speaking of inner psychological distinction that distinguishes the Beinoni from the Tzaddik. Let us turn to an explanation of this matter from Kabbalistic sources which illuminate the inner workings of man. So again, as the Tanya is saying, we discussed that the differentiation between a Beinoni, a Tzaddik, Rasha is an internal state. Well, a Beinoni and a Rasha is external, but a Tzaddik and a Rasha is internal. We need to discuss the internals. So, the following is based on what Rabbi Chaim Vital of blessed memory writes in the Shari HaKedusha Gates of Holiness, and in the Eitz Chaim section 50, chapter 2. So all those are from Rabbi Chaim Vital, aka Lurianic Kabbalah. And now we turn to page 37 to the middle of the page, where we get to the text again. In the Shari HaKedusha, we learned that in every person in Israel, both Tzaddik and Rasha possess two souls, referred to in Tanya as the animal soul and the divine soul. The confrontation between the two entire souls, presented here in Tanya, sharpens the struggle depicted in rabbinic literature of conflicting impulses or inclinations within a single psyche. This is what I explained a moment ago. In Tanya's worldview, you really do have two different minds and two sets of conflicting feelings. This approach will prove helpful in validating your inner struggle and finding effective methods to tackle it. So I spoke mostly about validating your inner struggle, right? But of course, the Tanya is going to develop. Again, you always start with awareness. Once you are aware of where your struggle is coming from, now you know how to deal with it. And so that's what the Tanya is going to discuss. So these first chapters that are going to discuss, so to speak, validating who you are. And then later on, we're going to discuss how to tackle it. In stating that two souls are possessed by every person in Israel, both Tzaddik and Rasha, the Tanya rejected the view of some earlier Kabbalists that only a Tzaddik has a divine soul. And we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. If you're a Kabbalist and you want to spend the time on that, you can. The Tanya cites a scriptural source for the presence of two souls in a single person. As again, the Tanya always wants to prove things from scripture. As the verse states, and we're going to read the entire verse as it's written here in the translation. For this is what the high and exalted one says: the spirit that enwraps itself is from me, and the souls which I have made. Now, notice in that sentence, it goes from singular to plural, right? It says the spirit that enwraps itself is from me, and souls which I have made. And so that is a proof it's talking about a single person, because it says the spirit.
It says me, and then I made.
So it's saying the spirit that enwraps itself, in other words, the spirit that enwraps you is from me. God is saying it's from me. And the souls I have made.
Wait. The spirit that enwraps you is from me, God.
Yeah.
And the souls which I have made.
Yeah, so that means
So
you.
he made them.
Yeah, God made the souls, of course.
So why did he make two souls?
Well, that's our mission in life. That's what we'll learn. Why did God make anything not kosher? Could have just made it easy, not make anything not kosher, not have to tell you not to eat it.
That's true.
Okay.
Why did God make the black mamba? You know
What's
the
that?
black mamba? It's a very, very.
Oh, the snake, yeah.
Yeah, snake in Africa.
Yeah. Okay.
Dangerous.
Page 38. The first half of this verse refers to spirit in the singular, suggesting we are speaking here of a single individual. The verse then concludes that God placed in that one person souls, plural, which I have made. So this is a proof that Tanya is bringing that a person has two souls. Okay, based on the verse, the context of the verse, it seems to be saying that a single person has two souls. What are those two souls? So he explains. These are two complete independent souls in their own right, and not merely levels within a single soul. In chapter 2, we will be introduced to second divine soul. For the remainder of this chapter, we will familiarize ourselves with the first, the animal soul. Okay, so we're going to go on to discuss the animal soul. Nefesh achas mitzad klipa. One soul stems from the egocentric forces known as klipa. What is klipa? He explains. Throughout the Zohar and in all subsequent works of the Kabbalah, the negative forces in the universe are referred to as klipa, klipos, which literally means peel or shell. The klipot are so called because they distort our perception of reality, causing us to focus on the external and false, rather the inner and true, just as the worthless peel obscures the valuable fruit within. Klipa is the consciousness of the unmodified perception, taking the sensory world at face value by looking exclusively at its peel while ignoring its core. Therefore, it makes you think of yourself as independent from God. The resulting attitude is one of selfishness and urging for sensory gratification, right? If you look at this world as a peel, we understand, right? This world is, so to speak, a peel over the godliness, right? There's a godliness within this world, but we don't actually see it. So if you're looking at the outer layer, what you see with your eyes, right? Just as you're looking with an apple, you see only the skin on the outside you see the peel of the apple. You don't see the inner fruit. You see the peanut skin, the shell. You don't see the peanut itself. We see the world. We don't automatically see the godly life force within it. You have to work to see it. That's why evil forces are called klipa. Why are they called klipa? Because they are hiding their appeal, their shell, over the truth that's within it, and they're a distortion of reality. So that's what it's called, klipa. We'll use the word klipa a lot, shell.
Give me an example of some klipa.
Give you an example of klipa? Everything. This cake contains godly divine life force that can help you study and can help you learn, it can help you, but you can also just see it as yummy chocolate cake. In other words, it can be life. It can be a life force with the godly blessings in it for you and your life and help you get the calories you need to study and to learn and to exercise. Or you can just say, I just like the chocolate cake.
So everything has to look at it two different ways.
Yeah. Yep.
How about
It's like the difference between looking at or let's say it's the difference between looking at the item or looking at the nutritional bar, right? Or looking at nutritional facts, right? We human beings, we love the shell, right? We want, we keep trying to find something we keep trying to find something that has a good nutritional facts along with good taste. It's hard to find.
It's hard to find. Well, you can't make it.
You can make it. So that's the idea, is this, so to speak, quote unquote, the nutritional facts. They're not, you don't see them externally. You have to learn about them and study them. And so now when I see this cake, I know, oh, this is 200 calories. Do I need, I'm a skinny person, maybe I need 200 calories, or maybe I don't need them. Or maybe I'm going to eat it because I didn't eat lunch. So I can afford the 200 calories and it'll give me the energy I need because I skipped lunch,
Well, I'm sure it has sugar and chemicals in it.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Food is a good example, but it applies in everything.
Gasoline.
What's the inner content of gasoline? Gasoline is, again, just another form of energy.
Right.
It can be used for
To
good
blow
or
things
not good.
up or take you to the shul.
Yeah, it's energy. Energy can be used in different ways. Okay, Sitra Achra. The forces of Klipa, also known in the Zohar and Kabbalistic literature as the other side, which is not holy. So again, evil things can be called either Klipa, shell, or Sitra Achra, the other side. And we'll explain in later chapters more at length. While being careful not to depart from the monotheistic belief that God is the only real power, the Zohar tends to describe reality in dualistic terms. The universe, we are taught, is pervaded by two powers, Kedusha, holiness, and goodness. Its opposite, the other side, both vying for influence. In its worldly manifestation, the other side of Klipa is a very real and powerful force, and its presence in your animal soul is responsible for much inner tension. So the other side means anything that's not godly, it's automatically on the other side. You're either with us or against us, so to speak. That's the other word of evil stuff. It's called the other side. Now, again, as he's going to explain in the later chapters, how Klipa and Sitra Achra do not violate monotheistic beliefs. He writes that in the note over here. I should actually just read what he writes. We will elaborate more on the nature of Klipa and Sitra Achra in chapter 6. In chapter 9, Tanya will explain why dualism implicit in the doctrine of the other side does not violate Judaism's monotheistic beliefs. So, again, so we're discussing here the animal soul. So the animal soul, which comes from the klipa, the shell, and sitra achra, the other side. We're just going to read a little bit more over here. The animal soul is embodied in your blood, energizing your body. As the verse states, the soul of flesh is in the blood. Tanya emphasizes that the evil and selfish inclinations of your animal soul are embodied within you. The desires do not arise from an external metaphysical force or demon that incites you, whispering in your ear, right? As I said, it's not whispering in your ear. Your carnal passions are...
A demon, we'll use the term demon, that's interesting.
Well, we're saying it's not a demon, but yes, you can come to the next JLI course where we discuss demons. Very much part of you. Later on, this will represent another important element of the Tanya's validation of your struggle. The analogy of appeal also offers us some insight into how the animal soul accesses the body, as the Shar Kiddush explains. The pure divine soul, which is the fruit, is invested within the impure animal soul, which is called peel, klipa of your fruit. And both of them together are invested in the body. Thus, the component parts of the holy divine soul are situated within the components of the impure soul, and the component parts of the impure soul are inside the components of the parts of the body. Only your animal soul has direct access to your body as a whole. It alone is the blood. The divine soul's influence is limited to the emotions of your heart and thoughts of your brain. This is the last part we're reading today, because next we're going to discuss the emotions that come from the soul. But the first step to understand is this animal soul comes from the evil side. And on top of that, this animal soul is the you, if you want to say it. In other words, your physical life comes from your animal soul. It's the peel, it's the shell, it's the you, the physical body that you see. Just, you know, when people say human beings are really just animals, to an extent, that Tanya says, well, we kind of agree. You know, the human body is the animalistic soul. However, that's just the shell. Inside of that shell is the godly soul that's within the animal soul. That's how it comes in our bodies. Okay, when we're in heaven, there's no animal soul there, and our godly soul is not invested within an animal soul in heaven. But the way our godly soul accesses our body is through the animal soul. So if the godly soul wants to pray, it has to do it through your animal soul. And it can do it in one of two ways. It can either convince your animal soul or force your animal soul, right? It's like in general, you want to get somebody to do something. You can either force them to do it, right? You take a gun, you take a gun to his head. We're going to discuss later in Tanya how that works, so to speak. But let's talk in human terms. You take a gun to their head, you know, or you move their arm, right, like a kid, or you convince them. I don't mean you should do it to the kid, but I'm saying like you could do, right? If the kid's not picking something up, you know, you take their arms, pick it up, and put it in the bin, right? Or you convince them to pick up their toys. The animal soul is the same way, but the godly soul has to work through the animal soul. The animal soul is the shell. That is, so again, when people say we are an animal, human beings are just animals, to an extent, they're right. If you look deeper, they're wrong, but to an extent, they are right. Let's read, oh no, we're not gonna read the practical lessons. So what we have got from today, we're going to,
What is that, a study guide?
this is a guide, and it helps, gives different ideas. What do we have? What are we pulling off today? What was the main idea we explained today? We explained today that when we are pulled by our two different forces, that is not external voices, that is being pulled by an animal soul and a godly soul. We explained the animal soul is not necessarily evil, but it is self-focused, and the godly soul is mission-focused. The animal soul is the real you, so to speak, the human you, and is the real inner you, which is even more deep. And is, I would say, the real you is the fruit within the peel, is your godly soul. So when you're disturbed, why am I sometimes inspired or sometimes not? Understand that this is what's going on between your godly soul and your animal soul. I'm going to stop the recording, and we are going to open it up for questions and comments.